should I say fellow Ghanaians or my brothers and sisters? The value is the same. But members of the trading and stakeholder community at KIA here, and other invited guests, let me say that I'm very pleased to be joining you this morning in this stakeholder consultation exercise. The commander, as he said, has not just harassed me, but he has actually commanded me to show up this morning. But as I said, I'm pleased to be joining you for a number of reasons. Number one, as he indicated, and as was confirmed by the representative of the Commissioner General, KIA has achieved significant revenue gains exceeding its targets with the introduction of Icums. And I think this deserves commendation. But secondly, you've done this within the unfortunate circumstances and context of COVID-19, which for purposes of trade facilitation becomes a major hindrance in terms of the work that you do. So if, in spite of all the challenges of COVID-19, you've been able to exceed your targets, then you need to commend yourself for that effort. But I'm also pleased to be here because, as the commander said, KIA is one of the few entry points that have been able to implement smoothly the Icums and Unipass technology, even if admittedly there have been challenges. Because you hardly ever hear about any major difficulties with KIA since the introduction of Icums. And I think on that note, you also need commendation. I think most of you are aware that since my ministry championed and initiated the introduction of this new trade facilitation and customs management system, there have been a lot of very unsavory comments and remarks about this particular system. And as a politician, I can understand why these comments have been made. Essentially, they've been made for two reasons. One, because change is always difficult to manage. But secondly, they've been made also because of a lack of appreciation and understanding of the need for the introduction of this new system. So sometimes you have to, even if you are not pleased about it, you have to accept these comments in good faith. And that is the approach that I have taken. But to the glory of God, since I'm sitting by the Reverend Pastor, to the glory of God, as lawyers will say, the matter is speaking for itself. And the system is bearing its own testimony. It cannot be by chance that you introduce a new system in such a complicated national environment, particularly with the challenge of COVID, and then exceed your targets. It cannot happen by chance. So it's a combination of the blessings of the Almighty God and also of the intrinsic value of the system that has been introduced. To put this in appropriate context, you know that our trade facilitation and customs management landscape has been characterized for several decades by a multiplicity of service providers. Many of you, I'm sure, have been in this business for long enough to realize that many years ago we started with an import licensing regime, which was incidentally supervised by the Ministry of Trade and Industry in the 70s. And this was escalated to the implementation of ASICUDA. But then remember that ASICUDA also gave way to the pre-destination inspection scheme. But we didn't stop at that. The pre-destination inspection scheme also gave way to the destination inspection scheme when we had the DICs. And at the same time with GCNet operating. Now, then this was further escalated when the DICs were terminated. This was further escalated to the conjoining of GCNet with the West Blue system or pass. And so from there, we now have Unipass/Icums. But the real reason why a change was not just critical but appropriate was the fact that if you audit the implementation of all these various systems that I've referred to, we ought not as a country to be having at this time challenges with revenue mobilization. If everything was going well, we ought not to be having problems with our revenue generation. So it was obvious that it was time for a change. And one of the reasons underpinning the introduction of Icums was to be able to address this challenge of a multiplicity of service providers working within this environment, sometimes in an uncoordinated manner. So this suggested the need of a comprehensive, integrated end-to-end system built on one platform that will have an internal mechanism to provide the effective risk management that allows you to be able to collect or optimize your revenue collection. Because once you have multiple service providers on different electronic platforms, it becomes very difficult for you to manage the interplay between the various users of the platforms. So basically, if you hear comments about, did we really need a new system? That is the answer. That if indeed all these systems that I have talked about over the last 60 years, if they were working, we should not be having challenges with revenue generation. And the fact that also it was not possible to continue having multiplicity of service providers. So that is really the basis for the introduction of this integrated solution for trade facilitation and customs management administration. But the introduction of this system is of strategic importance to us as a country for a number of reasons. Number one, if Ghana wants to become the investment destination of choice, not only in West Africa, but on the whole continent, then you need to have a trade facilitation system that is attractive and supportive of doing business. You can't become an investment destination of choice when you cannot manage your own trade facilitation agenda. Number two, with the introduction of the Continental Free Trade Area, this becomes even more imperative because now Ghana can legitimately be considered as the commercial capital of Africa. And this therefore requires that within our own country we must have a system of managing trade and facilitating trade that can be benchmarked with the best practice anywhere in the world. But it also goes beyond that. As you know, an effective trade facilitation and customs management system reduces the cost of doing business. And if you reduce the cost of doing business, you make your companies more competitive. And last but not the least, when you build infrastructure, whether it's the seaport or whether it is the airport or whether it is at your land borders, entry points, exit points, the cost of it. So whichever way you look at it, the introduction of Icums is of strategic importance to us as a country. And I'm pleased that in spite of the early operational challenges, we are at a point now where, from what the sector commander has said and what the Commissioner General's representative has said, this is probably the first time that we are seeing such superlative performance, from our customs division and our revenue authority. So I want to end by once again congratulating you and commending you, particularly at KIA, for the excellent work that you've been doing. Yes, the system may be the best, it will be the most efficient, it could be the most effective, but still it requires human beings to manage the process. And again, under the able leadership of the sector commander, on behalf of my ministry, on behalf of His Excellency the President, I wish to commend you and hope that you would continue showing this sense of excellent performance. I thank you for your attention.